Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the channel RVCCIS.Info, where faculty representatives from Rock Valley College's Computers and Information Systems Department talks to you, our community at large, about things roughly having to do with computers and information systems. Joining me today, as always, are our two generous hosts, Stephanie and Jim. Howdy, everybody. I'm Eric, and this is going to be take two of a new segment we're going to call 3 Under 30. You can thank Stephanie for the clever naming convention there, where we talk about 3 topics here in the news of, can we call it, computers and information systems, and give you a little bit of what our insight or background understanding would be about those. So first and foremost, we thought, since they are ongoing, we would talk about the pipeline and supply chain attacks of late. Does anybody remember what the name of the pipeline was?
Is it Capital?
Oh yeah, the one in Texas.
We're really good at this. It's the reason you're paying too much for gas.
I think it's Capital Pipeline.
I think so.
We'll go with Capital Pipeline.
Okay.
You can write to us. If it's wrong, please feel free.
Colonial
Pipeline.
I knew it began
There
with
we go.
C.
If only there was some kind of reliable, I don't know, interconnected web of computers and information that we could use to help us with
that we might teach with.
Believe me, we're better in a classroom sometimes, but not really. So anyway, the Colonial Pipeline attack, and what does that mean for the future of security?
More governance, maybe?
Yeah, more governance, yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully, well, okay, so when you read about the attack, I'm probably taking this from somebody, I don't know, but it was a simple VPN account that they got a simple password for, and they did not have multi-factor authentication on it, and they were able to get into the system. So, you know, there's definitely need to be some accountability there with all of that. And I believe there was a presidential
It's a decree
statement,
or whatever.
Yeah, saying that they needed to be held accountable, or they need to contact CISA or DHS or any one of the agencies when there was, you know, a breach. Because, you know, Joe Granneman always told he still tells us, you know, the ones that you know aren't the scary ones, it's the ones that you don't know.
Right.
Because there's so many that you don't know that are happening.
Yeah, and I don't know, I mean, these companies need to have penetration testers just try to break into their systems and, you know, lock it down. It's easy to point fingers, and I'm sure a lot of their IT people are putting out fires all the time, but get experts in that, you know, are security versed, and try to lock that stuff down as much as you can.
Yeah. And maybe best practices too, because so if you read the story about the account with the VPN, that was, I believe it was a disabled account. So it wasn't
disabled, it was I don't know if it was technically disabled, it was a account that was not used anymore.
Right. So that's much more accurate. Not a disabled account, but an account for someone who wasn't even using the VPN anymore. And that's a huge no. And with, you know, an insecure password, there's got to be, look, I know that, you know, the average employee doesn't want to be burdened with any more, you know, 2-factor authentication or things of that nature, but there really should be some kind of baseline of best practice, and 2-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication should be pretty low-hanging fruit for most of us by now.
I know. I kind of like it, actually. You know, when I go into my bank account now, or a lot of my credit card stuff, I like it that they do that now.
Yeah.
Feel more secure.
Yeah, and I've turned it on almost all of my accounts. I think there's only a few that I haven't turned it on. So it just is, it's really good. And until they get, you know, something like blockchain for everybody or something that is more secure. We're going to have to do multi-factor authentication for the meantime, until some other technology comes along. There's not going to be, the simple way out is not the best way and not the most secure way.
Right. And a lot of it does. So certainly this is not what our audience wants to hear, but a lot of that responsibility should come back, I think, for those of us who are managing those networks, etc. Not necessarily the Capital Pipeline attack, but with SolarWinds, etc. Those were known vulnerabilities that went unpatched. It was, a lack of effort, really, in a lot of cases. And, there really should be some kind of centralized authority, maybe, that can make a real punishment for how this goes, because, and I'm not saying disrupting, the meat supply chain. That also happened last week because of a ransomware attack. There was a iConstituents, that is software that like state, local, and national politicians use to do business. That was hacked this week. And there's got to be, because it's our data that gets swept up in that. So it's usernames, it's passwords, it's all that kind of stuff, and it's also meat and oil. But there really should be a toothy consequence to this, because otherwise, if these companies get to skate, good luck to you. Maybe you should freeze your credit.
Business as usual.
Yeah. And there isn't a good governance. And I think, Jim, you said before that California is pretty good with some of those laws or regulations, but it still isn't perfect. It's really hard to prosecute. So, there does need to be some sort of accountability. And I read somewhere that one of the, like for important infrastructure in America, that places like the pipeline could get fined up to like $7,000 a period if they don't keep in contact.
$7,000.
That's which is not much. I have to look that up again.
If you think about, like, and I know this is weeks old, and it's kind of faded a little bit from, the national consciousness, but, think of how many gas stations ran out. Think of the fluctuation in gas prices. So that company was fined $7,000, and one guy was, but okay, a day.
But how do you set that?
Yeah, and then so one guy was fired as part of a PR mea culpa, but probably fired with a huge golden parachute. And the carnage that ensues is totally on us mooks, and that doesn't make a ton of sense.
So this is from npr.org, and it's, TSA is in charge of the security in this, and they're saying that companies are to report cyber attacks to the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, and which is also part of DHS, and those that fail to do so would be subject to fines starting at $7,000 a day.
Or loose change as far as some of these companies are concerned. But
absolutely.
So anyway, so there it is, the kind of the bafflingly simple ways that these attacks happen. A simple mistake, a disused account led to all of that heartache. So there you have it. Question, or topic rather, number 2 here for 3 Under 30: rural broadband, the expansion, the reality versus the plan. So for this, we were going to lean on our resident rural resident, and that would be Stephanie.
It's always crappy out in the country. So, Brad and I have been living here a long time now, like 17 years now this year. And when we first started, it was dial-up only, and I
Mhm.
laughed and was like, I'm not paying for dial-up. There is just no way. And then recently, and then I decided to try Verizon's service, and that sucked because I have like 2 bars. And then recently, I think it's LR Communications, which is, I think they changed names, and then Rise Broadband. So I have the line of sight wireless, but if the trees grow too much in the windrow, it tends to be a little difficult. But I get 25 meg, and it's pretty good. But I don't feel like anybody's trying to change it. I don't really feel like there's all that. It's going to have to go, I don't know. Back in 2010, I was part of a NSF grant that we were trying to bring fiber to all the small towns and do it through the school districts, and then hope everybody else would come along. But I think that happened, but I don't think that many people added on to it.
Yeah, that whole infrastructure of, digging a hole and trenching out and running cable, it's just too prohibitively expensive for these companies. I don't think the bean counters won't justify that cost, to bring it out to rural areas,
Yeah, and the cost really isn't in running the cable, it's in boring the cable, it's in putting it underground.
Right.
And that's a pretty hefty cost. I remember when I did a quote from, it was, I couldn't tell you how many feet, but I like at Rock Valley, it would be from the stoplight to our building at WTC. I don't know how many feet that, like what, a quarter mile, a tenth of a mile?
Right.
Maybe it's a tenth of a mile. So it was going to cost us $30,000 to run it. And we're like, we don't have that money. There's no way we can afford that. So because it was like, 18 or 20 bucks a foot just to bore it.
Right. Yeah. Cause I remember when, talking to IT, when the news tower went up for us, downtown Rockford, and they were thinking of connecting fiber from our main campus to downtown. And former colleague Tavis, we all know Tavis, I think they got a quote for it was going to cost like 300 grand.
Yeah, it's insane. And it's all in the boring. So then you do line of sight wireless. I think that's what they did, right? They did.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. That's what they did.
Yep.
So, and that's what the place I used to work for, that's what we did too. It was actually before Rise Broadband got bought out. It was called T6 Wireless. And so that's what they used because they could get business grade.
Long throw wireless from, like a mobile network, virtual mobile network provider, same deal.
Yep. I kind of feel like it's going to have to go in the air for it to do anything.
Wasn't it Facebook? Facebook wanted those balloons.
Yeah, it could happen to us even in urban areas where they might start, as cables start to degrade, they might say, you know what, we're not going to replace them. You're just going to go over the air.
Yeah. And Kirkland, they're using Aircell. That's the company that's there to do their.
Yeah, I do want to say that, again, this goes back now, since Stephanie and I have been at RVC for a while now. Our previous stories are getting a little older. But right before I left Silver Spring, and I do know that in 2015, as part of a rollout they were doing, and that's an urban neighborhood. But it's also an internet desert where, you can go a few blocks away and get actual real decent internet, and then, come into the urban setting a little bit more and there's no internet. And as part of the expansion, and I think it was an NSF or a Perkins grant, I don't recall. But what they were providing was essentially 4G over-the-air modems.
Yeah.
And that solution works pretty great as long as you got the coverage for it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, our metal building, doesn't like it, but I put up a mesh system at our house, and then the connection from the dish to the main router, and then we have another connection because if I can't make my own connections, there's something wrong with me, especially when I teach it. And we just put a wired connection from the house into the shop because it just doesn't like to go through the metal. So we kind of got through it that way, and it works fine. But it would be great if there was something faster out there for those of us in the middle of nowhere.
Agreed.
Or
get on it, nation. Come on.
Yeah. Or for people that can't afford it, you know, we need some sort of initiative. So
yeah, absolutely. So there you go. Best ways to make rural broadband happen, maybe over the air. And finally, for our 3 under 30, Amazon sidewalk and security. Now, for those, and I know the answer to this because this is actually taping number 2, because the first one, some idiot didn't hit record, which, you know, happens on low caffeine days. But it does make these conversations move faster when it's the second time we're talking about them. So for those of you who are unaware about Amazon Sidewalk, the idea is to connect almost like a mesh network, like an Internet of Things network, connect all of the Amazon devices together so that in the case of an internet outage, for example, a Ring doorbell could still work because a huge conglomerate connection of Alexa devices or Ring doorbells or tile trackers or any one of a number of devices that all operate in the Amazon network or universe really could share their connections together. And for our security people, is that a fantastic idea for security?
And
no. And IoT devices are the worst for security.
Right.
Like they are notoriously terrible for security, software, network wise, basically every wise.
Yeah.
In any metric we have on the bottom, IoT stuff.
Yeah.
So we all do suggest turning that stuff off. Now, in between taping number 1 and taping number 2, it's not even taping anymore. That's how old I am. This is all digital, and I'm like, put it on film, everybody. And then I'm going to go have a cigarette with Edward R. Murrow or something. This is pathetic.
You take 1, take 2.
Yeah, just
get the click.
Yeah. Anyway, that's me reliving the trauma. But at any rate, the in between, we looked at whether or not this was only available on Apple devices or if this was part of the greater like Amazon universe. And I checked on 2 Apple devices and I'm able to turn off the sidewalk feature, but my Android companions.
Well, okay, so I'm going to preface it with, I don't really have an Alexa device that I use it with. So it might be that too, because on Amazon's website, which we looked up in between time, it says the exact same
procedure
directions as the Mac website that we listed. And
just for those of you shaking off the dust and joining us, if you were to go back and check our social media feeds, either on Twitter or on Facebook, there was a procedural for how to turn off Sidewalk, which is really 4 taps. It is quick. And we cannot suggest that you do it fast enough, but we're uncertain if it shows up on every type of device.
Yeah, because it didn't show up on my Android phone, even as an option. So for my Alexa.
Right. And this time around, I just had an on-off switch. It did not list my devices. It did not ask me, but mine are, I do have Amazon devices. So, you know, first party and third party accessories. So it doesn't say which ones are even the ones that are connecting with that.
Yeah, I'm gonna look again, but yeah, I don't have any devices connected. Probably because I get rid of Alexa and I just have Google devices. That's probably, I gave my brother.
And Google will never stop just taking all the data they need. They're like, nah.
Yeah, they're like, we're just going to sell everything that you like.
Shut up, product. We're still selling yours. So at any rate, it's really hard to suggest how many of you should turn that off, but probably the answer is everybody who has one of those Amazon devices, because you are not the one who's likely to be the beneficiary of that risk. It's probably going to be somebody else that you didn't want to hand over data to accidentally. So we do suggest turning that off. So there you have it. Those are our 3 under 30. Go ahead and leave us a comment below. Let us know what you think about our new segment. Let us know about anything having to do with the Colonial Pipeline. Let us know about your thoughts to rural broadband or your reaction to Amazon Sidewalk. While you're down there, you can hit like and subscribe and hit the bell to be notified of new content as it becomes available. You should also follow us on social media. It is not an empty follow. We can be found at RVCCIS.Info on Twitter, on Facebook, here on YouTube, and on anchor.fm. And there's goodies in there like how to turn off Amazon Sidewalk if you'd like. So on behalf of Jim and Stephanie, myself, Eric, and the rest of the Rock Valley College community, stay safe and stay sane out there, everybody.